Welcome to the Steelers by the Lake podcast. My name is James Strong, joined once again by my co-host Cody Turner. Cody, how are you on this fine Victory Monday?
Oh, James, I am doing just lovely. Oh, my Lanta, James. We have a Victory Monday again. It seems like it's been a little bit. It actually really hasn't. It really hasn't. We won last week against the Raiders.
Won last week. Yep.
It just feels weird after going, we're on a roll again. There's a lot to discuss with this game. There's a lot to discuss in a lot of different aspects, James. But before we do anything, how are you?
Doing well, man. Doing well. So happy to talk about some success and a little bit. Wow, biggest scoring output in a while for Pittsburgh.
I'm curious to see. I'll do some research while we're talking about stuff to see when the last time we put up 37 points was. There's a chance it was the loss against the Jags in the playoffs when we put up 40 and they put up over like almost 50.
Man, I hope we did that before that, but I feel like the last couple of years we did not make it to 37.
No, definitely not. But before we go too far on the game specifically, James, let's also take a look at some roster moves and things that happened before the game.
Yeah. So previous to the game, we had a roster spot open that was actually filled by outside linebacker Ade Ogundeji. I know I told you guys last week I wasn't going to have to say his name anymore. I do. So he's back on the 53-man roster, and that had a lot to do with the outside linebacker position, the depth there and what was going on. And then they had a couple elevations, Cody.
Yes, a couple elevations. They elevated Brandon Johnson, the wide receiver, who we got to see a little bit a few weeks ago, and running back Jonathan Ward, another guy that we've kind of been hot and cold on. He runs pretty hard when he's in there, but don't see a lot of him to get a good sense of what he can do. But both those guys were elevated for game day. James, we also had some inactives. Quarterback Kyle Allen as the third emergency quarterback. He's obviously dressed just in case, but he was listed as inactive for the game. Wide receiver Roman Wilson. He was back for one game and back on the inactive immediately. DeMonte KZ on the inactive list. Running back Aaron Shamplin. Shampy, don't worry. We did message your girlfriend on TikTok, or I responded to her video because she was very excited to see you play in your first game. Linebacker Nick Herbig, center Zach Frazier, and the running back / kick return masterpiece of Cordarrelle Patterson, all listed as inactive for the game. But James, you have something to say.
Something very unique about this, Cody, that a couple of things. If you listened to us last week, you heard us tell you about who was projected to be out for the game. Alex Highsmith was listed on Friday as projected to be out, which we thought was weird because he practiced in full all week.
Yep.
He did end up going. If you're looking for that last second update on what's going on, follow us on TikTok. I do an episode every week right beforehand to give you an idea who's going to be playing, tell you about the inactives and what that might do as far as the forecast of the game. Also, very, very weird to me. You elevate running back Jonathan Ward, and then you put running back Aaron Shamplin on the inactive list.
Ooh.
That's an odd one. You don't see that too often. I think Ward's the more explosive, the quicker dude out of the two. And I think Shamplin's a little more close to the skills of like Jalen Warren, Najee Harris, so it's kind of redundant.
Yep.
So my guess is they did that to have the faster change of pace type dude. But just something to look at in the weeks coming forward. If they like Ward more than they like Shamplin on game day, then maybe they've got that mixed up. We might see a move there.
Yeah. So the last time, James, real quick for you, Pittsburgh put up 37 points. Was in a loss on what appears to be Sunday Night Football.
Oh no!
Against the Los Angeles Chargers in 2021, we put up 37. Now the year
that was the Herbert game where he ran for 90 some yards on us.
Yep. And then the year before that, we did put up 38 points against both the Philadelphia Eagles and the Browns in back-to-back weeks.
21 was that still Big Ben?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and then 2020. was 2020 was the last year with Pouncey, but that was also the COVID year that we went 11-0 before we lost like 3 straight or something. But yeah, against the Eagles in week 5 and Browns in week 6 that year, we put up 38 points in back-to-back weeks. So not as far back as I thought, but that's still 3 years, roughly.
That's too long.
That's
it
very
shouldn't be
too
that
long.
long to score 37 points. I know 37's a lot, but you got some of these teams like the Ravens seem to be putting, upper 30s
They're averaging
to
37.
Like,
maybe not quite that.
And obviously, you don't expect to have the same output as like an elite offense, like say the Chiefs, being that we don't have that same guy at the helm that they do. But still, it shouldn't be something that's a huge feat to score 37 points.
Yeah.
But you got to have at least a good feeling. 32 last week, 37 this week. A lot of things going in the right direction for the team right now.
Yeah, 2 different quarterbacks taking the helm in those 2 weeks as well. So it's a conversation that we will be talking about. We're not going to ignore that one because that's a big one.
No.
But we are going to kind of break down. We're going to talk game first, James. Last week we got on a tangent and didn't stop. We're going to talk the game, and then we're going to come back and talk all the things and our opinions and all this stuff about it. So before we go too far into the conundrum of our brain holes, let's talk this game specifically. So obviously, Pittsburgh hosting the New York Jets after they just acquired Devontae Adams. So Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams back together again, the lovely couple. And James, 37-15. At one point, we were down, 3-15? Or was it? I think, no, it was. It was 3-15.
15-3, yeah.
Yep, 15-3 at one point, and we scored 31 unanswered points.
So it would have been 15-6 then.
6, you're right. I'm having a stroke.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. But that's that's a big swing, man. Big swing.
A very big swing. I mean, we shut them down in the second half. And, I was very concerned this game. I was watching it with a bunch of guys out at the Edinburgh Hotel Bar. Hashtag sponsor, hashtag not actually. And we saw the slow start again, James. I was concerned. Putting 3 points up in the first quarter was very frustrating. It was still more than what we averaged. We averaged 2.7.
More than the average.
But it was still wild. And then it seems like in the second quarter, we got a little bit late there. We made some late second quarter pushes and some scores. And then the second half, I don't know whether the offense took over or the defense took over, but we took over. Yes is the answer. I mean, we'll talk about all of it, but let's first start with the quarterback position, James. Russell Wilson.
Yep. I mean, there's no going around it. The start of the game for Russ was rough, man. He was missing people pretty bad, throwing it into the dirt, missing them by quite a bit.
Yep.
But as the game went on, he got more accurate.
He shook the Russ off.
He shook the Russ off, man. For me, the biggest difference from what I saw in this game versus some of what we've seen previously is that he did a good job of when a guy was on the move, hitting him in stride so that he could continue his stride and get a lot of yards after catch. We saw that with the big one to Pat Freiermuth, where he was able to get 30 yards. We saw it with a couple other ones as well. And that's just so important. Accuracy is something we talk about all the time. How accurate are you? It's so important to be accurate. But within just making the completion is the placement of the ball and the completion and how you're enabling that receiver to continue gaining yards afterwards.
Yeah.
And another thing was the deep ball. He really pushed it down the field in this game, but when doing so, kind of his patented, as we kept on hearing from Chris Collinsworth throughout the game, his patented sky ball or moon ball, whatever you want to call it, he just puts a ton of air under that ball.
Yep.
So if you have guys that are skilled at jump ball situations, as is a specialty for George Pickens, you put him in his best case scenario. If he's one-on-one, most DBs he's going to be one-on-one with are not going to be able to jump as high as him. They're going to be shorter than him. They're going to have shorter arms than him. And he's got a distinct advantage in those situations. And really, he's got a large desire to get that ball and come down with it.
Yeah.
So I think that was a very noticeable thing, is that they attempted to get it to George early and often and put him in situations where he was one-on-one with guys that he could beat. Even one-on-one with Sauce Gardner, that's one of the best corners in the league, and he was still able to come down with some balls in those situations. And even in the one situation of pass interference, which is just as good.
Yep, 100%. I mean, if you're going to get the free yards, take the free yards. Let's talk numbers here just for a second. 16 of 29 on the game for Russ. Again, that first half was much worse than the second half. 264 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He was sacked one time for a loss of 4 yards. James, in this game, I truly do feel like, and I think we have slightly different opinions on it, but I'm going to quote the good Charles Barkley from yesterday. I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago. Charles Barkley talked about this. My buddy Nick Pretzel, our friend of the podcast, Nick Pretzel, mentioned this to me yesterday. Man, stats are like bikinis. They show some things, but they don't show everything.
True.
That's how I feel about this game. I felt like Russell. That's how I feel about it. I feel like Russell. There's an aspect where I almost feel like the completion percentage doesn't do a good representation of it either, because in the second half I thought he played better with accuracy. I thought once he calmed down and got things going, he played better with accuracy. The one thing I will say didn't improve, in my opinion, through as the game went on, was the accuracy of the deep balls. I felt like they were very underthrown. The Pat Freiermuth one was the one that I really thought he got out there and Pat had to fully extend for it and literally pull it in with one hand. But I felt like almost all of the passes to George were slightly underthrown to the point where, yes, George Pickens is now going to finally be able to make a name for himself as a number 1 deep threat because he's getting the deep balls. But I'd still feel like those could have been drastically better balls. If he goes up against a corner like Sauce again, or someone that can turn and make a play on that ball, that there's a chance that's picked. I mean, that's literally to the definition of 50-50 ball.
And I get that.
Yeah.
But I would like to point out that the first 2 years, what we learned about George Pickens is that Kenny Pickett threw a mean back shoulder fade to him, which means the ball has to be a little bit underthrown. And through that experience with Kenny Pickett, we learned that is something that George really specializes in. He really excels in that situation, but it has to be just barely underthrown, not completely stop your momentum and come back to the ball like we were seeing in previous weeks. So that was the big difference to me. I agree 100% that there were a number of those that were underthrown, but they were just a slight enough amount underthrown that he could make a play for the ball and was able to come down with it because of that.
Yeah.
So I think that was a large part of it. Is neither guy is throwing a perfect deep ball right now.
Nope.
But are you putting it in a spot where your receiver can come down with it? Are we going to end the game with 260 passing yards or 130 passing yards?
Well, and
it's a big difference there.
There's an aspect where I also feel like it's unfair to judge these two right now, because Russell's obviously having one game played against a very beat up secondary that got beat up even more during the game. Sauce had an ankle/knee injury happen. His knee buckled, his ankle twisted. Both their safeties in this game went out with injuries at one point, one with a concussion, one with a hammy. And then on top of that, I also feel like the game plan was different with Russell. I felt like we were making plays go down the field more. There were a couple times where I could tell as soon as he snapped the ball, I was like, this play is designed to go deep. Like, I could just tell based on how Russell was backing up and doing his progression of his steps that he was looking, and he was immediately looking for a long bomb. I don't think we got to see a ton of that from Justin, and I do blame some of that on coaching. I think that they took it, and that's not a bad thing. I just think it's unfair to compare. I think they did a good job of making sure that Justin Fields was able to run if he needed to run and had that opportunity, and I don't think they pushed the ball downfield because of that. I also thought the offensive line did better than they have recently with blocking in both pass and rush. So there's improvement on the offensive line that Russell Wilson now got to experience a little bit of benefit from that Justin didn't necessarily. I mean, the first 6 weeks we had 6 different combinations of offensive line. I think this is the first
different.
5 different. Okay.
Yeah.
But so that's my point, is Russell now is playing with an offensive line that has a little bit more playing time together underneath their belt. They're a little bit
this
more
was a
in
brand
sync.
new unit too, though, because of the new center.
Yeah, okay. That's what I figured. I couldn't remember if he played last week or not. Well, he played a little bit last week, right?
A little, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know. It's a struggle because it's going to be a conversation, and I'm already going on a tangent. We need to get back to the game.
No, this is an appropriate time to have this conversation, in my opinion, because we always start talking about quarterbacks, so we got to talk about it, right? I mean, this is not something to dodge. I agree with you as far as the offensive line. I felt that Broderick Jones still struggled in this game, but we really saw some nice blocking out of the other guys. McCollum had one bad hold, and outside of that, kind of looked the part. Mason McCormick was a monster in this game. Isaac Seumalo showed people the definition of submarine anytime they tried to do a short yardage plunge, a quarterback sneak, tush push, whatever you want to call it. Seumalo is getting a heck of a push, and Dan Moore's getting a hang of that now too.
Yeah.
He must be taking some tips from Seumalo. They've got like
they got to be practicing it now in practice. So
yeah, absolutely. And as far as like Fields and the plays, I've seen a lot of film lately on some of the decisions he was making in some of these games where you'd have a guy in the flat, like let's say around like a 3-yard out, and then a guy, 10 yards down the field from him, and there's no one near the guy down the field, but he's taking the guy in a shorter pattern.
Yeah.
And that's not a lot of that, I think, is just him being so worried that he's going to lose the starting job if he throws an interception, that he's taking the easier throw, but taking the easier throw is what's going to cost you the job.
Yep. And I understand that. And I think the reason that I was going to bring that up as well is his fear of, when you look at his games all year, he's slowly improved up until the last 2 games. And I think and I think the last 2 games are when he started feeling the pressure, like, hey, they're talking about it. I'm sure Mike Tomlin talked to him about it. I don't believe for 1 minute that coaching staff ignored Russell's health improving. I think they talked to him about it. I think that added some pressure to his game. When you see his yards go from 156 week 1 to 117, 245, 312, and then drop all the way back down to 131 in a game I thought he still played fairly well against Dallas but lost, and then 145 against the Raiders, I feel like he took a little bit of hit to the confidence that he had as the starter. And there was even a time where he was asked about the identity of the offense, and he's like, I don't know what you mean. And that confused me. That really confused me. Because I think every quarterback's been asked that about their team sooner or later. Like, what's your identity? And the way he didn't even dodge it. He just didn't know how to answer it. And I think at that point, he already knew he was on the way out.
Here's my opinion on that. When he didn't answer it, I think he didn't answer it because he didn't want to have a really awkward conversation, because for the last 6 months, we've been hearing about this team's going to run the ball. We're going to smash you in the mouth. Yep. We're going to be a hard-nosed run-first team. And he knows that that's what the mission is, but he didn't want to say it because they were struggling to run the ball. And I know, like, if that were me in his situation, and I know our identity offensively is to try to bully you and try to run the ball down your throat, and we just got bullied, I do not want that next question from the reporter if I tell him our identity is to run the ball all over you and then we didn't run the ball. Like, not effectively anyway, Yeah. Where Najee was coming off that one game where it was less than 2 yards a carry. It was like 12 carries for 19 yards, and just the offense was not doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah. And I think this is as good a time as any to bring this up. I think what our team benefited from most with Russell Wilson in this game was the leadership. I don't think it was, it clearly wasn't his accuracy. I don't think it was his deep bomb. I don't think it wasn't his mobility. He didn't really scramble a whole lot. Thankfully, he didn't get sacked a whole lot either. But I think his leadership ability affected the group of young guys that we have very, very much. We talked about it during the pregame or the pre-show here, and I said I feel like the team got their swag back. Like, when I tell you this team it just played harder than I feel like I've seen them play all year, I mean that. But I don't think it's because of anything different play calling or this or that. I think that Russell very much has a cool, calm demeanor. And I think that guys like Najee, George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth can build off of that. They're not vocal guys. Najee can be, but not naturally. I don't think George isn't very vocal unless he's upset, and that's not a bad thing. I don't think either. He's allowed to be upset when the team's struggling. But I think that in the huddle, the things that are being said on the sideline, I think that the leadership ability of Russell is what impacted them the most. Even at the end of the game, I feel like 9 times out of 10, Najee Harris doesn't run that ball into the end zone. 9 times out of 10, he falls down at the 1 yard line. We've seen Najee do that in the past. And I felt like this team, he was just like, we're back. It was a we're back kind of feeling. It was a, hey, we came in, everyone expecting us to lose with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams back together. And this entire team, especially on the offense, we'll get to defense later, took this game and kind of ran with it. Again, the first half wasn't impressive. First half was very rough for Russ. But seeing the plays that George made, we'll get to the receiver stuff. I don't want to go into that right now. But seeing how all these guys reacted to Russell being in there, I still don't want to say he's my for sure glorified starter. Run with him. There's definitely a big challenge coming ahead after the bye week. We have all the tough teams minus Cleveland after that. So it'll be interesting for sure to see how this all plays out. But again, overall, Russ had a good game.
Yeah, step in the right direction. And one of the things that the team benefited from, I would agree, is when you're able to complete those deep balls, and regardless of whether you think it's the most accurate or effective, the completions happened, the yards happened. You can't stack the box. Nope. You can't have your safeties up on the line because you keep on completing these deep passes. They had no choice but to back off, which really allowed that rushing game to open up. And again, 2 weeks in a row have a very successful rushing game. So I think the success of the pass and the threat of it was, but also I felt like Russ did a nice job moving within the pocket without scrambling.
Agreed.
And that's such an important thing, is feeling the pressure, knowing where the guy's coming from, taking those 1 or 2 steps forward, left, right, whatever it may be. There was one play where he had a play action. And when he came out of the play action, there's a guy coming straight at him. He stopped and took 1 step back and then had kind of like a sidearm throw around it. And that's something that is just, it's an experience thing.
Yep.
He sees it. He knows what to do because he's done it 100 times. And it was completed and the drive continues, so stuff like that is definitely things that you cannot measure. And you're right. I think that confidence goes all throughout the entire locker room, and everybody's like, dang, man, that pass that was like 6 inches off last week is right in the bucket this week. And sometimes it is just a game of inches, and it's that much of a difference, but that much of a difference allows guys to get a bunch of yards after catch or make the catch.
Yep, 100%. Well, let's bounce over to the wide receivers. We're talking about quarterback and throwing the ball. Let's jump to wide receivers before we go running back. George Pickens had himself a day. 5 catches for 111 yards, 1 touchdown. I was impressed with George because of his ability to catch some of these balls. The one that he juggled for about 30 seconds, it felt like, and then catching that was phenomenal. Bounced off the defender's shoulder. He caught it. Yep. Defender did a good job of forcing it back out, and then he caught it again. Impressive play by George. You want to know what I was most impressed by in this game with George?
Tell me about his run blocking.
His run blocking, baby.
It was awesome in this game.
The one play where he's like, I'm not going to get a block in the back, but I'm going to get in both y'all's way. He took out 2 defenders just by putting up his arms and making sure he was in between them. Phenomenal.
There was a pass to another wide receiver that was like 6 or 7 yards short of the sticks, and he went and got his guy, and they were able to run right behind his block to get that first down.
Yep, I think that was to Jalen.
So instrumental.
I think that might have been to Jalen.
It might have been. I remember it being on the right side of the field, but I don't remember who the receiver was.
Yeah, I mean, Calvin Austin only had 1 reception in this game, and it was the big one for 36, so it wasn't that one.
Yeah. Nope, it was not. That was on the left sideline. He was wide open.
Nobody went with him. Pat Freiermuth, 2 receptions for 51 yards, had himself a game, a nice one-handed catch as well. Probably
some awesome yak on the other one, right?
Yep.
He caught that and just rumbled, man. And the guy trailing him couldn't catch him, and the guys in front of him barely slowed him down.
Yep. Darnell Washington, 4 catches for 36 yards. That was fun to see. I didn't like 2 of the plays, but it was fun to see. I thought
a couple of them was like a yard or 2 past the line of scrimmage, and you didn't really have anywhere to go.
No,
but the other ones with some room to run, and we're seeing that he can make people miss and hurdle and lower shoulders and really get some yards after catch.
I was going off in the bar before the game started about giving the ball to Darnell, and one of the guys that was a Steeler fan, obviously not quite as much as us, that's fine, was like, no, don't pass it to him. He's not any good. I was like, he's not any good because you haven't put him in a good situation. I was like, you give him the ball with 5 yards to run, he'll run 5 and fall for the other 5 at first down. I mean, it's just, it's crazy.
He falls forward. It's a 3-yard gain because how big
minimum. Van Jefferson, 2 catches for 15 yards and the touchdown. Love to see the touchdown for him there. Jalen Warren, 2 for 15 as well. Najee Harris, the only guy without a catch that was targeted in this game, which is crazy and upsetting because I had him for receiving yards in a bet. But that's beside the point. 264 yards passing. It was, and I like how the ball was moved around.
Yep.
I was impressed with it.
I think it's an important game for that because we've shown games where we've gone heavy to George.
Yep.
And there hasn't been a game yet. Even Calvin Austin's had games where he's had like 4 catches in a game.
Yeah.
We have not truly utilized Darnell Washington like this before. And that really puts a whole nother weapon that people have to account for. And that's great. I want them having to account for Darnell Washington because that's going to open up Freiermuth, Pickens, and Calvin Austin even more.
I'm waiting to see us.
Wonderful thing.
I'm waiting to see us get Connor Hayward and Michael Pruitt involved again. Michael Pruitt lined up as fullback. So did Connor Hayward this game. If you do a play action and get it to those guys in the flat, you got to account for everybody at this point. Like there's no formation. There's nobody on the field who you're like, well, they're going to run it now. You never know. Put the 6th lineman in there and pass it to him for freaking crying out loud. I mean, I'm excited. And again, this is my frustration with the whole Justin Fields to Russell Wilson. I did really feel like we opened up the playbook a little bit this game. We did a lot more. We did more things. I still don't like the passes behind the line of scrimmage. It bugs the crap out of me. But overall, it was a phenomenal game by this receiving corps. When they got the ball in their hands, they made things happen. So, love to see it. And
a couple of these drives by this offense this week, too, were really long drives.
Except for one.
70, 80 yard. Yeah, obviously the one.
The 1 yard.
Yeah. But that was something that stuck out to me right away is that they were able to sustain some very long drives and then finish them and get in the end zone. So that's a real nice welcome change. But that comes with such high yardage totals, right?
Yep.
You get that, you're bound to be completing that. So let's touch base with this running back room. We kind of skipped over him. Najee Harris had a really, really nice game again. 21 carries, 102 yards, 4.9 yard average, which is tremendous for him. Another touchdown. So back-to-back weeks, a 34-yard run, which is his 2nd longest run in his career, only behind the 36-yarder last week. So we're really seeing a different side of Najee that we're not used to. He looks shifty. He looks quicker than he's looked in a while. Maybe ever as a Steeler. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if he watched a bunch of film on Barry Sanders recently or what, but he's running in a completely different manner than he has, and he's making a lot of people miss all of a sudden.
That he is.
So something happened in his mindset, in his approach, in his film study, something to where he has decided he's going to make some people miss and not just try to run everybody over, and it is working really well for him. So if he continues this, he is working himself into a nice contract extension. Because at a certain point in time, you're going to look at this and say, I can't re-sign him.
Yep. No, I agree. I'm excited to see what can happen with Najee. I'm excited to see. I mean, there comes a point where you're right. I mean, unless you're going to go out and draft somebody else early, which I don't want to see that happen. Najee is proving that he can be the future. And especially with the downfield running, when he gets blockers in front of him, when he gets to the open field. That's why I hate I know that he scored last week on the pitch. But I hate doing that to Najee. I want to get him into open space early through a gap, whether off the tackles, inside the guards, right next to the center. I don't care where the hole is. I feel like he gets a lot more momentum when he runs like that. But he's proving with the upgraded blocking we've experienced this past week or two that he can get outside. It's just not natural for him, especially in the NFL with the faster defenders, bigger defenders. In college, it was a little different. But he's proving that he can still put up yards against these guys who are, faster, bigger, stronger. He can get outside, get upfield. So I'm hoping that continues to improve. Jaylen Warren, again, like you said, 44 yards rushing for him. Love to see that. 3.7 average for him on the game. He still had a 10-yard run, which was a first down. So I'm excited for the potential here. I think that there's a chance next week you might see us run a little bit heavier than what we did. I could see 40 plus carries next week. Not saying I want to see that, but I just think that that's something that might be part of the game plan for next week. There's a chance we go up a little bit earlier than we did in this game against the Giants. So, and then obviously let's talk offensive line. We talked about, Broderick struggling a little bit more. Dan Moore had some good blocks. Isaac Siamalu with the tush push type blocking. I thought Ryan McCollum outside of the one hold played really well. The one hold was very, very bad, but
Quinnen got some serious penetration and he held the crap out of him, and I get it, but
save your quarterback. So,
And honestly, Mason McCormick is starting to put a name out there for himself. He's putting some back-to-back good film. He's kicking butt. He's showing energy. He's pushing the pile after the play is over. And that's kind of an underrated thing in this game too, is I felt there was probably 3 times in this game where Pittsburgh was pushing the pile and the refs called it dead while it was still moving.
Twice. And it drove me
once
nuts.
It was short of a first down on a 4th because of it.
Yep.
So yeah, that's something to be said, that these guys are rallying to each other, with each other, for each other to get those extra yards. And that goes really far in the end of the year and in the end of games.
It does.
Because you start wearing the other guy down when they're like, dang, man, we keep on getting into these pig pile situations and they keep on pushing us back every time.
Yep.
It's a defeating thing to have somebody moving you against your will.
There's also, I'm going to bring this up now before I forget. I was very upset to a certain degree with the refereeing in this game. The one play where Larry Ogunjobi early had a massive rush stop and played through the whistle and tackled the guy. And then it happened 2 other times to Najee where he was thrown down after the whistle and they didn't call it on the Jets. I was very, very frustrated about those calls.
You got to call it the same way both ways.
100%.
Have to.
100%.
Have to. And the crowd let them know it every time too.
Yep.
The crowd let those referees know it. I'm glad they did. Yeah. I mean, and Tomlin even gave them an earful one time, because you have to set that standard, and then both teams have to have the same standard.
You have to set what?
Different for one. The standard.
The standard. You mean what's on your shirt right now? There you go. The standard is the standard.
The standard is the standard, and it should be the same for both teams, refs.
And then I'll talk about this now. We'll get to it a little bit later. Phenomenal special teams play by Minkah Fitzpatrick. Was not leveraged even in the slightest. He tapped TJ Watt on the helmet and gently rubbed the other guy's back to say, "Hey, here I am. I'm going to block your punt now, or your field goal, or extra point, whatever." But I didn't like that call either. Danny Smith did not like that call.
No. Danny was ready to murder somebody. And what good football justice blocked field goal later on in the game.
Yep.
Dean Lowry was able to get his paw up there. Keanu Benton, I think his hand was right next to him. If not
literally side by side, yeah.
Yeah. If one of them didn't get the block, the other one was gonna. So the block field goal, kind of a little bit of football justice for the incorrect call, which again, the former head of officiating, that was the person for the Sunday Night Crew, said this is absolutely not a penalty.
Yep.
So
as they say in the NBA or basketball, ball don't lie.
Ball don't lie. It doesn't help you after it's been called wrong and it's not reversible, though.
Yeah, not at all. With that being said, let's switch over to the defensive side of the ball. We obviously just mentioned Dean Lowry with the field goal block, which was absolutely huge. And actually, James, before we switch over to, I want to talk about this just for a quick second. Pittsburgh in their first 6 drives. Their first 6 drives, they had 2 field goals and 4 punts. Okay? Their last 5 drives was 4 touchdowns and a field goal.
Cruising, man.
Every time we touched the ball in the second half, we scored. That's big.
Mm-hmm.
That's big. Okay, now we can move on. Defensive line, I mean, they played, I thought they played phenomenally well. I thought Larry Ogunjobi had a phenomenal game. He had a sack, tackle for loss, that obvious penalty that I don't think it should have been called. Cam Hayward had a phenomenal game, getting a lot of penetration on some run plays. Overall, I thought that defensive line played really, really well. Keanu Benton even had a massive rush run stop that I thought was really nice to see. Keanu Benton also had 2 pass breakups. Cam Hayward had a pass breakup. Getting those big paws up in the air, making a difference.
These boys got their hands up.
They did.
They got their hands up. That's the key, man. If you can't get to the quarterback, get your hands up. Aaron Rodgers, known for being one of the quickest time to release quarterbacks in the NFL. So you're not going to get to him real often. That's just the way that works. So very important to get those paws up and try and bat some passes down. They did so successfully. In fact, the one Keanu Benton was on a 4th down.
Yeah.
Like, there's no better than batting the ball down on a 4th down where it doesn't even get past the line of scrimmage. That's fantastic.
Well, and even the best part about that is there's no roughing the passer. There's no chance of a penalty. You just knocked it down. Done deal. Get off the field.
Play over our ball.
Yep.
By the way, we're going to score again.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
So real nice tone set there by the defensive line. I'd love to see more sacks. That just wasn't in the books in this game. The outside linebacker crew, I thought this was an awesome game from Alex Highsmith, and it's not really going to show up in the stat line, but boy, was he getting a lot of pressure on the quarterback.
I thought the same thing from Jeremiah Moon, which was impressive. I thought he was making some big plays. He obviously never got to the quarterback. The couple times he got deep, he beat his guy downfield, and the guy almost had to hold him. I think 1 or 2 of them could have been called, but he's a no-name guy. He's not going to get those calls yet. But I thought Jeremiah Moon, when he came in and had to sub in, he wasn't a liability. He wasn't a concern. There was one time I thought it was the play that Landon Roberts took out TJ and the other guy, and TJ had to come out for a play. Yeah. And I got worried as soon as I saw Jeremiah Moon come in the game. Now, he didn't have to play that down, luckily. Somebody called a timeout. I think the Jets did, and then TJ went back in. But it's exciting to see a 4th outside linebacker on this team that's not a liability.
Mm-hmm.
So that's exciting for me personally. TJ Watt obviously had a quiet game comparatively, no sacks.
He had to go against the tight end to start off every single rep.
He had to go against the tight end and a running back half the time.
Yeah, before he could even get to the offensive tackle to try to actually start a pass rush move.
Yep.
So a very effective job by the New York Jets. Too bad the other guys took care of business for them, because that would have been a good day for them had they come away with. But being that you did not, well, then maybe you should have used your tight end more in the passing game or something. I don't know.
Something. Yeah, send him downfield.
Yeah. Middle linebackers from this game, Cody, we saw a new name at the top of the tackle list, and it's a rookie, and he only played half the defensive snaps.
Yep. Mr. No ACLs, Peyton Wilson, 10 tackles on the game. Listen, I love that Minka's not even in the top 4 for once.
Thank God.
I actually really enjoy that. And I don't think it was a bad game from Minka. You know what I mean?
No.
I do love seeing the number. Well, we'll get to that later. Middle line, like you said, middle linebackers, Peyton Wilson, Patrick Queen had himself a decent game. I don't know how I felt about Landon Roberts in this game. I didn't see anything that was like shocking or a revelation.
The biggest one to me was that 57-yard play. He came flying in to try to make the tackle, missed, and took out both Patrick Queen and TJ Watt. and they were both lined up ready to make the tackle.
Yep.
And it went from a play that could have been like an 8 to 10 yard play to 57 yards because of it. So that's just one of those things that, in that situation, especially with a really explosive, dynamic running back, sometimes instead of trying to get that knockout hit, you're better off to come to balance and trap him. Because had he just trapped him on his side, Queen had the front, TJ had the left. And he came in and blew up his own guys, and the running back took off for a huge gain because of it. So just really important to play good team ball in that situation and not so much to worry about the big, huge, devastating hit. But I think that's part of why we saw a larger dose of Peyton Wilson, and I think it's going to continue in that direction. I think we're going to continue to see more and more of him.
And I'm okay with that.
It's not a bad thing to have Landon Roberts out there in like short yardage and goal line, because he is a stud against the run in those situations.
We saw it with the forced fumble,
Yep. Yeah, that's his specialty. But if it's a passing down, man, we really need Peyton Wilson out there with Queen.
Yeah, we definitely do. Moving to the secondary, those corners, James Pierre unfortunately did come in and play a lot more football than I would have liked him to have played. And that was due to Dante Jackson, I believe, getting injured. Shoulder injury, James is saying. You're familiar with that, my friend. But 5 tackles for him. Joey Porter had 3 tackles. He had 1 tackle for loss as well. Joey Porter played very, very good coverage this game. Phenomenal coverage on Devontae Adams, which he was mostly shadowing throughout the game, if not all the game, honestly. And then the breakout star of the game, James. Let's talk about him.
One Beanie Bishop, and I did not see this coming. In fact, I was really, really matchup because it seemed like Alan Lazard, who's a larger wide receiver, was going to be one-on-one with him a lot as he runs as their slot wide receiver, a large portion of their offense. Beanie Bishop played the best game of his professional career, maybe his college career as well. Probably. It's tough to say.
I'll find out.
But he had 2 interceptions in the game and blew up a play behind the line of scrimmage as well. The first interception was just gorgeous. Aaron Rodgers threw the guy open. The ball was a little bit behind him, but he literally had to flip his hips and turn around, and then he one arm stuck it out there and picked the thing off, and just a very impressive interception. The second one came off of a ball that was tipped up in the air, but again, presence of mind, awareness, caught the ball easy, had a really big return, brought it all the way back to the 1 yard line. So he played a lot bigger than his size in this game, and really was an instrumental part of Pittsburgh really putting the clamps to Aaron Rodgers in that offense.
Yep. Yeah, I thought Beanie Bishop is obviously the surprise of everything. This is a guy that was told to get a real job during the offseason because he wasn't expected to be on a team. As reported by Alex Kozora back on May 10th, he talked about this, and Steelers or Beanie Bishop once had a teacher that tell him, that he wanted to be a professional football player, and they said, get a real job. That's not possible. So he's out here showing that it's possible. At 5'9", 180 pounds with a 4.39 40-yard dash at his pro day, he made the team, and he's taking advantage of every single chance that he gets. He had 4 interceptions at West Virginia his senior year, it looks like, or his last year. But obviously, I don't think he had 2 in one game. So this is obviously the best game he's ever had. And
couldn't have come at a better time for him, right? Because we are 1 more game away. One more completed game away from Cameron Sutton coming off of the suspension list. And that's exactly where Cameron Sutton is expected to play, is at the nickel corner position. And Beanie Bishop said, okay, he's coming back and we're going to want him on the team, but he ain't taking my job, man.
No. But there's nothing wrong with having 4 decent corners on the team. Let me tell you that right now.
No, we'll take it.
I don't know the last time this happened, quite frankly. I don't think it's happened in my lifetime.
No, mine either. We have never had a cornerback room that deep. Not a chance.
So
you're lucky to have 2 typically. 2 good corners, let alone have 3 or 4.
And you never have 2 good outside corners. It's always an outside and a nickel. It's never 2 outsides. So it's very interesting to see how this is all playing out. Safety room, James. I thought Deshaun Elliott has completely solidified his role in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform. He is the absolute best complement to Minkah Fitzpatrick's game that I think we could ever see. It's almost like it's not quite as good, but it's almost as good as a Troy Polamalu, Ryan Clark. I mean, it is insane to watch. It's great to see. You see Deshaun coming up and getting crazy hits in the holes and making plays in short game passes and screens and runs. And then Minka's able to be back there and be a ball hawk. Now, nobody's throwing the ball towards him, and I don't blame him. But that just shows what the game is now changing to on Steelers defense. People are trying to stay away from Minkah. They're trying to force the ball into places where they think they have a weakness. Well, guess what? Beanie Bishop isn't a weakness anymore. So you got to figure something else out. Peyton Wilson coming in and doing his thing. It's exciting to see where this defense is going.
I would say if anybody on the day in the secondary was not all that good, it was James Pierre. James Pierre got beat up a couple of times in coverage. But again, he's not even expected to play.
No.
He's not supposed to be out there. It's just that Dante Jackson got dinged up and was unable to return to the game.
And if that happens,
they only had 4 healthy corners. So
and if it happens after next week, it's going to be Cam Sutton or somebody else.
And I don't think we're too far away from Corey Trice probably being healthy enough to come back either.
You're telling me we have 5 good corners?
There's a possibility of it, yeah.
I'm going to have I don't know what I'm going to do. I need to buy a jersey.
You're going to enjoy it?
Yeah.
Don't buy a Cam Sutton jersey.
No, I would not.
Don't buy a Dante Jackson jersey either. Those guys both have on their deal.
Listen, maybe Beanie Bishop and definitely Joey Porter Jr.
Yeah.
Those aren't the next 2 for sure that I'm buying, but like they're on the list. But yeah, I mean, it's just crazy to see the stats and everything rolling. James, let's bounce over to special teams. Yeah, special teams real quick. Calvin Austin, 2 punt returns for 9 yards. Big whoop. Chris Boswell, 3 for 3 on field goals, 4 for 4 on extra points. Boz for president, baby.
Boz for president.
Corliss Waitman, 4 punts for 184 yards. That was great. 3 of them inside the 20. One was down real good. It was like at the 7 or 8 or something. It had a good bounce. Bad bounce technically, but it didn't go in the end zone. It came back.
That was Rodney Williams on that one, right? He fielded, I think. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Overall, just an all-around phenomenal game when you process a blocked extra point. Granted, it didn't count. A blocked field goal, almost a blocked punt at one point. And then the 2 interceptions and the touchdowns on offense. I mean, it's incredible to see the all-around football game that we had that game. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, you had almost 150 yards rushing. You had 264 yards passing, and just an efficient game all around. All parts of the team contributed to the victory. So that's how you end up with a final score with 37 points on the board. Everybody chipping in. That's how that happens.
And let's talk about the I don't know if you heard what they call him, the enemy of bubblegum. Or the enemy of chewing gum, Danny Smith. Yeah. I think he had the most fun ever at this game. I'm sure he's had a lot of moments in games with Troy and with other players, but the way that special teams rallied around him after that blocked field goal was hilarious to watch. Mm-hmm. Just seeing how old is he? 70 or something? Just jumping around with a bunch of fun. Dear Lord, that was fun and exciting and funny to watch, especially because Danny Smith is an Edinburgh alumni. So. That's always fun to see what can happen from good old Edinburgh. But
yeah. And neat too, they showed a statistic, and I don't recall how many it is, but in like the last 3 or 4 years, Pittsburgh has more blocked punts, field goals, extra points than any other team in the NFL. And that has everything to do with Danny Smith, because realistically, your team, special teams specifically, that's changing dang near every year.
Yep.
It's your back of the roster, linebackers, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, corners, and those are the guys, right?
Yep.
Other than people like Miles Killebrew, it pretty much changes from year to year as to who you have to work with, which means the coaching is incredibly important, which just speaks to how incredibly skilled Danny Smith is as a special teams coach.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to be reaching out to Danny Smith, see if he doesn't want to be a guest on the podcast. We're going to reach out and have a chat with him.
That's the guy right there. You might have a tough time understanding him as he's like,
It's very true.
The whole time, 17 pieces of gum in his mouth.
Listen, if you guys ever listen to our original podcast with the old mics we had, it's going to be very, very similar to that with the quality. But no, I mean, it was a phenomenal game. After the game, obviously, a lot of things happened. I thought at one point, Mike Tomlin was questioned about his decision to make the quarterback change. And Brandon Marshall asked him, I think it was, and he said, that's why I'm highly compensated. And so,
yep. He was also quoted before the game as saying, this is a decision that was alone. If this was all me. So
yeah.
That's a big thing for him to say, hey, nobody else really wanted to bench Justin Fields. This was a Mike Tomlin thing. For Mike to say that and then for it to go well, hey, man,
I mean,
once in a while, you got to give the dude credit.
The fans laid into Russell Wilson in the first half. They did.
He had it coming.
Yeah. They were not very quiet on TV with the booing. But James, you want to talk about these two injuries real quick?
Yep. So post game, we saw Montravius Adams kind of he only played one snap, came out, didn't play again the rest of the game. So you have to assume that ankle's kind of being an issue for him. Dante Jackson, as we talked about during the game, injured his shoulder again. This has been basically a weekly thing with him. He misses some snaps almost every single week. I think the difference this week is that the game was in hand and Mike Tomlin saw an opportunity to give him some rest and just put James Pierre out there instead, which was fine. So Beanie Bishop made enough plays that it didn't matter that it was James Pierre out there. So those are your two injuries from it. Dante Jackson has stated that he believes he'll be ready to go for the Giants game. So
yeah,
that's good news. And then he'll have an extra week to heal up in between. Maybe he won't have any shoulder issues the rest of the year. That would be nice.
Yeah, that would be, as one John Gruden says, that'd be nicey. I hate those videos. You don't even know what I'm talking about.
No, I do know what you're talking about. I just, after what John Gruden did while part of the Raiders organization,
You're what?
Ooh, I'm not a John Gruden guy.
I'm not either. I'm not either.
He was very entertaining, but some of the stuff that came out of his mouth about people from other races is never appropriate at all.
No.
And even more dumb to do when you're a coach in the NFL where 90% of your roster is a minority. Yeah. That's just stupid, man.
I'm just impressed that he has the platform he has now with the stupid stuff he's posting online. But I'm not going to feed into that anymore than we already have. But with that being said, look forward to the next show coming out on Friday. We will be talking about the New York Giants game, back-to-back weeks of New York teams. It's going to be an interesting one. Will we see Daniel Jones? Will we see a different quarterback? No Saquon Barkley's a plus.
It sure is.
It's going to be a very interesting week of football because there's a chance that Pittsburgh puts up more than 37. So we would love that here at Steelers by the Lake. We can't thank you guys enough for watching. If you're on YouTube or listening anywhere that you listen to your podcast at, be sure to like and follow on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Subscribe, ring the bell. It's free. It doesn't cost you a mother trucking thing. Don't forget the 5-star reviews on a podcast make James here very happy. And until next time, this is your host, James and Cody, signing off.
Peace.